Hey, it's the Midnight Raven, and it is March, and that can mean only one thing. It is the end of March, and we are going to look at the documentaries and reality TV stuff I watched throughout March and give you my personal opinion so you can either choose to watch these things or choose not to. But if you're new to the channel, welcome. I am the Midnight Raven, and we have a lot to get through. If you haven't watched my March movies, go check that out. You will find that I watched not as many movies this month. I think with the weather becoming nicer, it is hard to want to stay indoors. Sorry about that. But let's get into what I watched. Now, this was watching stuff on things like YouTube, Paramount, E4, and anywhere else you can find them. So, we have a bit of everything. We have a bit of cheese. We have a bit of true crime. Got a little bit of everything. So without any further ado, let's get into what I watched for documentaries and TV in March. First thing I watched, beginning of the month, was Waco, the TV program. So I think I featured this in my last video that I watched Waco, the new Netflix series. But I did watch that, which is a series about the Branch Davidian and David Koresh. And I did mention the Waco program in the last video, but in this video, we're going to mention Waco, the aftermath. So this is after the events have happened at Waco, where the Branch Davidians building was burnt down, David Koresh died, the children in the basement died, many women died, and what happened after that with the court case to prove whether the Davidians set the fire that set the place ablaze, or whether it was the government that caused the fire that killed everybody. So it was a really hard watch because you do feel sorry for the Branch Davidians, but you can also see the government's kind of side, and you do weigh up 50-50 where things could have been done different, and it's all in hindsight, as always. David Koresh was kind of crazy, but did they have the right to go in there, break down the doors, and effectively murder everyone from the fire? Now, we will never know who started the fire. It's pretty obvious that it's going to be 50-50. No one's ever going to be able to really say. I did rate that program quite high. Do watch the first one, which is Waco, and then watch Waco the Aftermath. It will take you a nice afternoon to watch it, but it is highly worth it. Next, I watched Naked Attraction. This is a dating program where you go on the show and there are pods with naked people in. And as you go through the episode, the pods get lifted and you see a full naked person. And there is another person trying to decide who to date. If you're not wanting to see naked bodies, men and women, not for you. It's a weird concept, finding a person based on their hairy feet or their big balls or their boobs, but it's been going for 12 seasons, so somebody obviously likes it. Plus, they're now hiring for a new season, so it was just something I watched. Me and my partner actually watched it, and we were finding it quite funny. Next, I watched Gabby Petito's American Murder. This is on Netflix, and this was a documentary looking at the Gabby Petito murder, where her partner murdered her and then went into hiding and then effectively took his own life. I cannot remember his name for the life of me. Gabby Petito was an aspiring content creator who wanted to do content and travel on the road. She had her partner filming her, and then it just all kind of went downhill. He then came home from a trip and she didn't come back, and it turns out he'd murdered her. Then the parents of the guy had hid him, and then eventually he was found that he took his own life. It's a very hard watch because you do feel sorry for Gabby Petito. You just do not understand the mindset of why couldn't you just separate if you were having such a bad time. But hindsight is 2020, isn't it? Next, I watched Madonna in her Sticky and Sweet tour. This is from Buenos Aires. This is from many, many years ago. And I love her Sticky and Sweet tour. I think it's one of my favorite tours that she ever did. I am a big fan of Madonna. And it was her Sticky and Sweet tour. It was the more toned, I wouldn't say it's a more toned down tour that she did, but it features more of the songs I personally liked. It featured some of the more obscure ones rather than her usual repertoire. Um, so it's a very long concert. I think it's about 2 hours long. So if you've got like an afternoon, you'd be fine. Or you could just listen to it in bits. Next, I watched Crufts 2025. This was over 4 days. This was over Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, around the 9th and 10th of March. And I watched the four days of Crufts. Now, I know everyone's not going to be a big fan of Crufts, and there's always controversy at Crufts, and you either love or hate Crufts. I personally love Crufts. I think it's a good way of people coming together, sharing experiences, sharing their dog, sharing their passion for it. I know there's controversy around it. I do know that. But me personally, I would love to go to Crufts. I don't own a dog. I have had dogs before. My family had dogs when I was younger. And dogs have a close place in my heart. But I know it's not to everyone's taste. Next, I watched The Night Stalker Hunt for a Serial Killer. This is Richard Ramirez, who was going around brutally murdering people, essentially because he had some sexual appetite, also because he was kind of a bit insane. He was going around at night, stalking people's houses, brutally murdering the husband, then killing the wives after sexually assaulting them. And he was eventually caught, if you didn't know the story, by a bunch of people on the street who recognized him. And then he was beaten by these people and eventually arrested. He is lucky that they didn't kill him on the street because he was actually surrounded when somebody recognized him. So it's a really interesting episode. I think it's about an hour and a half. It is quite long winded. It's on Netflix again, I believe. Richard Ramirez is an interesting character. A very interesting character because he did have a great big fan base who actually fancied him and would send letters to him in jail, marriage proposals, knickers, you name it, they sent it to him. Women are attracted to serial killers. It's a thing. Next, I watched Open House, The Great Sex Experience. So this was a very interesting concept for a program. This was a program where couples would go into a country house with the idea of being involved in threesomes. And they had their own different stories where either one of them wanted to be in a threesome or the other one did, or one of them wanted to see a woman with another man, or a man wanted to see his wife with another woman. It was an interesting concept. I wish they would do a second series. I think it does bridge the question of whether monogamy is the thing. Apparently, monogamy isn't. Lots of people live in polyamorous relationships, and threesomes are a big thing nowadays. Apparently, people do love to experiment and get out there. So, if you're into like looking at the concept of like a threesome or a polyamorous relationship, this program would be for you. I watched it because I thought it had some cool concepts in it. Next, I watched a program called Sex Rated, and this was presented by Rylan, and this was on E4. And this was where people came on the show and had their sex lives rated by their ex. It sounds weird. It is. So a guy would come on, or a girl, and their exes would have rated them in the sack in all aspects of it, from oral to how adventurous they are, to whether they like to give back rubs afterwards, to kissing, to foreplay. They would rate themselves, and then they would see whether their rating would be the same as their ex. And then you'd get these sexercises about halfway through where they would tell you how to give blowjobs, how to give massages, how to do BDSM. It was an interesting concept. Rylan made it hilarious. I'm not a big fan of Rylan, really, but he does have a sense of humor. So I watched that. Then I watched a thing called Love Triangle. Now this was a very interesting concept. This was where you had a girl or a boy, and they had 2 dates they could go on, and depending on what date they picked, kudos to them. So they had 2 date options, and they picked one of the dates. They would go on the date, and then you would move in with them. Basically, as soon as you picked that date, you'd go on one date, and then you were to live with them. After a week of living with that partner, you then went on a date with the other guy, which they didn't know at that time, or girl. You would then go on a date with them, and you would switch. They would then live with you rather than the other date. So at that point, you'd lived with both of the dates. And then, to make it worse, they then both moved in with the person. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, those two would move out, leaving the original person by themselves. And they then had to decide who they planned to date. It was nail biting just watching these people having to decide who they wanted to date, and it was so uncomfortable to watch. It was an interesting concept again for a program, but it was really hard to watch. Next, I watched Poison Liaison. So this was a true crime series where it looked at people who were poisoned, whether it was by their loved ones, their partner, for whatever reason, using strychnine, cyanide, rat poison. And it was people that poisoned their loved ones, whether it was for money, whether it was to get rid of them, whether it was cheaper than a divorce. It's got about 6 or 7 or maybe 8 episodes. It's not very long. It's a very easy watch. Goes through all the physics and all the psychological parts of the human psyche, discussing why these people would not just divorce their partner rather than kill them. Who knows? Sometimes it's cheaper, apparently. Next, I watched Bo Burnham's Inside. This was, I think it's about an hour and a half long. This was a production he did, and a comedy show he filmed while in lockdown, and it became really big once lockdown had finished and he released it. And then in the same day, I watched Bo Burnham's That, which was another comedy show he did previously to Inside. They're both an easy watch. They're a laugh a minute. They're funny. One of them is better than the other. I think Inside is better. Personally, I would recommend both if you just want a comedy afternoon on like a Sunday. Some people like Bo Burnham, some people don't. I personally do, but the Inside one is my personal favorite. Next, I watched Heartbreaking Truth of a Reality TV Star, Nikki Graham. Now, Nikki Graham was a participant and a contestant on Big Brother, and unfortunately, she suffered with anorexia and an eating disorder, and unfortunately, when lockdown hit, she became stuck in her flat. She became very ill, and her anorexia took over her. It's a very sad story. Originally, she had an eating disorder. She ended up going from facility to facility. She then decided that when she had got slightly better, that she wanted to go on Big Brother. She then became a participant. She did really well. She was evicted at number 7, I think it was. It was either 6 or 7. She'd also been in the Celebrity Big Brother as well, many years later. But her eating disorder just kept a hold of her. And when they went into lockdown and she was on her own, her eating disorder took over her. And unfortunately, she died due to I believe it was a suspected heart attack brought on by the eating disorder. And it's such a hard watch. If you loved Nikki Graham, maybe not watch it. It is a hard watch, and it discusses all of her eating disorder stuff. So it is quite a hard watch. Then I watched the 9/11 hoax, the woman who lied about surviving the Twin Towers. This was a woman called Tanya, who claimed that her husband had been in the Twin Towers, had died in the Twin Towers, and she escaped, I believe it was from the 100th floor. She was the only one on her floor to survive. Everybody else died. Her husband, who had also been in the Twin Towers at the time, had also died. She then became the founder of a support group for people who had survived the Twin Towers. She basically became the head honcho. But it turns out that she had never been in the Twin Towers. She wasn't there that day. She hadn't survived anything. It was a horrific story of how her arm was basically half detached and had to be reattached. People believed her. And then it only turned out that when people looked into her, especially a reporter and some of the people within the group, that they discovered that Tanya had lied the entire time. Once it came out that Tanya had lied, she was questioned by police, and then she basically went on the run and went into hiding. And it is a terrible thing to lie about. Lying about 9/11, it is unforgivable. It is a hard watch if you really have a loved one or somebody that was in the Twin Towers to find that somebody would lie about that. The reasons why, I don't know. Next, I watched Charles Manson's Chaos. I think this was about an hour long, maybe a bit longer. This was on Netflix. This is the new Charles Manson's Chaos. This looks at how Manson managed to get a bunch of people together to go and kill a bunch of people, looking at the concept of mind control and how he managed to manipulate and control these people, brainwashing them effectively to kill a bunch of people in the name of him and in the name of his suspected Helter Skelter that was coming to begin a race war. It's an interesting watch. It doesn't give you much more information than a normal Charles Manson program, if I'm really honest, but it is an interesting watch. Next, I watched The Devil on Trial. This was The Conjuring. This was a concept of where a boy was supposedly possessed by a demon at a house that he visited where he was cleaning with his family. His sister was moving. They went into the house. This devil apparently entered his body. They went home. And then after going home, the devil was apparently in this child. They then had two people who were supposedly going to give him an exorcism. And it's all to do with the film The Conjuring. If you've seen those films, you will have seen parts of this. This was apparently a true story. Whether it was true or not, there are people that would suggest it was fabricated. Other people believe it. So if you're into like the Conjuring films, you might find The Devil on Trial really interesting. And then the finale for this month, I watched Capturing the Charlie Cullen. So, this was a interesting watch again. Depending on your type of interest. So this is about the killer nurse. Charlie Cullen was a nurse who worked in different various hospitals, but he had a penchant for killing people. He believed he was doing them a favor by ending their life, even though most of them were in recovery. He apparently killed between 30 to 40 people across 9 different hospitals over a span of about 16 years. He was eventually caught through evidence, although the hospitals themselves tried to cover up the case. In each hospital he was in, they were more worried about their reputation than obviously the safety of their patients. When things become noticeable on the amount of deaths in a hospital and they suspected he was killing people, he was then moved to a different hospital and continued to kill until he was eventually stopped, interviewed, arrested, and they did have enough evidence to arrest him and charge him and send him to prison. So it is an interesting watch. If you are into the kind of psyche of why somebody would kill somebody, he killed people even though most of the people he were killing were making a recovery and they seemed to be doing all right. And then all of a sudden he would inject either them or their sailing bag that they had. So it was a hard watch. It was a hard watch to know that somebody like that could be in a hospital. And I think that's why people are so scared of hospitals. But that is everything I watched in March, whether it was TV, reality, or documentaries. So if you want to see the other video, I've done a video on everything I watched movie wise throughout March. There isn't as many on there because I was concentrating more this month on documentaries because I didn't find many movies I wanted to watch, but there is a video. If it turns out next month that there aren't as many to watch, I will just combine both videos together. But this one I had quite a lot on, and there are quite a few more documentaries I already have planned. But if you want to like and subscribe and give us a big thumbs up, let me know which documentaries you watched this month or which TV programs caught your eye and you think I should be watching. I know there's another program called Adolescence that apparently I should be watching. I have been recommended that. So if you have any recommendations, whether it's on Netflix, Paramount, YouTube, E4, Television X, I think it is, or ITVX, let me know. Give it a big thumbs up. If you want to help the channel at all, you can donate by PayPal, Super Chat, Super Thanks, or become a member. I'm going to try and do this every month. I don't know how much I will get to during the summer because I'm probably going to be outside more. But we are going to try and watch what I can. Like and subscribe, and I will see you very soon. Take care and thanks for watching. Bye, guys.